Ballygally Ghost Stories. Welcome to Irish Ghost Stories, where we dive into the eerie and unexplained, exploring the haunted corners of our world. Today, we venture to the picturesque yet ghostly village of Ballygally in County Antrim, Northern Ireland. While it may appear serene and inviting, Ballygally hides a darker side, one filled with spectral encounters and chilling tales that have lingered for centuries. Nestled along the stunning Antrim Coast, Ballygally is a popular vacation spot known for its breathtaking landscapes and historic charm. But beneath its idyllic surface lies a history steeped in mystery and hauntings. From the ancient Ballygally Castle, which is home to restless spirits, to the surrounding cottages and shores where ghostly apparitions appear, Ballygally offers a wealth of supernatural stories waiting to be uncovered. Join us as we delve into these spine-tingling tales. You'll hear about the sorrowful widow who still waits for her lost love in the haunted cottage, the eerie and unexplainable night when the past and present collided in the phantom ball, and the relentless search of a lost soul in the Ghostly Fisherman. These stories will transport you to a world where the boundaries between the living and the dead blur, and where every shadow hides a secret. So, sit back, dim the lights, and prepare to be captivated by the haunting tales of Ballygally. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to stay updated with more ghost stories from around the world. Now, let's begin our journey into the unknown. The Lady in White. A few years back, a friend and I were taking a drive along the coast road from Land towards Ballygally. We've driven this road many times and the scenery is breathtaking. It was early in the evening and we still had good light around us. We were chatting as we drove, mostly about work, our girlfriends, things like that. Nothing too serious. We were approaching Ballygally Head, as it's locally known. I caught sight of a woman at the side of the road, dressed all in white with dark hair. When I got closer, she swung around and made eye contact with me. It looked as though I had surprised her. I watched her a minute before she disappeared into a large rock. I looked at my friend and asked if he had just seen what I had. He agreed that he had. We were both kind of freaked out, but more curious, I guess, than scared. I drove on a little further and finally turned the car around to go back and investigate. I stopped the car at the rock where the lady had disappeared. We both got out to take a good look around. There was an eerie atmosphere that permeated the place. I remember that it was completely silent, not even the sound of the sea splashing against the rocks. It was like a dream. We never found anything. We got back in the car and continued on our journey, discussing what we had both seen. To this day, neither of us can explain what we saw in Ballygally other than an encounter with a ghost or spirit. Madam Nixon's gown. My husband is from Northern Ireland, but I was born in America. He moved to the United States with his family when he was a teenager. I'd never been to Ireland and he was dying to take me on a tour. We'd been married about 2 years when he decided to surprise me one day for my birthday. I couldn't wait when he described all the places we were going to visit: Titanic Belfast, the Mountains of Mourne, St. Patrick's Centre, the Giant's Causeway. He said that the place he was most anxious to show me was Ballygally Castle, though. He'd booked us a 2-night stay. I couldn't wait to stay in a real castle. I was immediately taken with the place from the moment we first arrived. I felt like a princess. I didn't feel anything strange or dark about it. It all had this dreamlike quality to me. We passed the day walking around the land, exploring the castle, and ate dinner in its fabulous restaurant. My husband fell asleep that night long before I did. I was too excited to sleep. Images that had been burned into me since childhood flooded back: secret passageways, knights in shining armor, long winding staircases leading to isolated towers. I knew it was silly, but I longed to go exploring. Especially at night when most of the other guests were asleep. So I tiptoed out of our room and began looking around. I was walking down this long hallway with stone walls when suddenly the temperature in the air shifted. It got cold. I could actually see my breath. The lights dimmed, but they didn't go out. A second later, a beautiful woman in a silk ball gown rounded the corner, walking towards me. She had dark hair pulled high up on her head and alabaster skin. She was as solid as I was. I smiled at her as she walked past, but she didn't acknowledge me. I could hear her dress dragging on the floor. It was a beautiful Victorian dress in a deep green color like nothing I had ever seen before. I thought perhaps she was an actress, or maybe just a wealthy woman who had come from some swanky masquerade ball. I watched her go until she rounded the next corner and was out of my sight. Suddenly, the lights brightened again and the chill in the air vanished. I explored the castle a little longer but finally got tired and returned to our bedroom. In the morning, we went down to the restaurant to eat breakfast, and while we were waiting I examined the portraits on the walls. There was the woman I had seen last night. "Excuse me," I said to our waiter. "Who is that woman?" I pointed at her portrait and the waiter smiled. "That is Madame Nixon. She lived here in the castle during the 19th century." I laughed. "You must be mistaken," I said. "I saw that woman last night. She passed me in the hallway outside my room. She was wearing a green ball gown just like in that picture." The waiter's face paled. "The woman in that portrait has been dead for over 100 years. He refilled my coffee but said no more about Madame Nixon. I tried telling my husband what I'd seen, but he told me I was probably dreaming. I know I was awake, though. Nothing else happened during our stay, and I still don't think my husband believes me, but I know what I saw." The Phantom Ball. My grandparents used to tell us this story when we were growing up. I guess I can't say for certain whether it's true or not, since I wasn't there, but my grandparents weren't the type to make things up. I'll tell you their story exactly as they told it to me. They were vacationing in Northern Ireland for their 50th wedding anniversary and had planned to stay several days at Ballygally Castle. When they arrived, they were delighted to discover that there was going to be a fancy dress ball and all the guests were invited. The manager told them they would receive a formal invitation shortly, and until then, they were invited to explore the castle and its grounds. My grandmother and grandfather spent the afternoon taking pictures of the castle and walking by the sea until they were so cold they had to come in. They were about 70 at this time, but they were both in good health and quite lively even at such an old age. They lived to almost 100. That evening, as they were getting ready for supper, there was a knock on their door. My grandfather opened it to find a man dressed as a knight holding an invitation to the ball. He extended it to my grandfather and invited them to go with him. Delighted, my grandmother grabbed her camera and they followed the knight down to the ballroom, where the staff and guests were all dressed in medieval costumes. An old-fashioned band played, complete with dulcimers, bagpipes, and harpsichords. They danced the night away and said they had the time of their lives. It wasn't until after 2 when they returned to their room, and they were exhausted. The next morning, they were at breakfast when the castle's manager walked by. My grandparents stopped him to pay their compliments on the ball. The manager stared blankly at my grandparents and without batting an eye said, "But we haven't had the ball yet. It's not for 2 more days." My grandparents thought the manager was joking, but when he finally took them to the ballroom, it was completely different from how it had been the night before. The decorations were different, even the linen had changed. I'm looking at a photo of my grandparents as I type this. It was taken the night of the ball. My grandfather is standing on one side of a knight in his armor, my grandmother on the other. They are smiling and look happy. The knight looks as real as they do. My grandparents were never able to explain what happened to them, except to say that for one night, ghosts and the living came together in a part of Ballygally that lies somewhere between the two. Their haunted cottage. Ballygally is not just known for its castle but also for its charming cottages that dot the coastline. One such cottage, known locally as the Widows Cottage, has a particularly eerie reputation. While vacationing in Ballygally, I rented this picturesque cottage for a week. It was a quaint little place with a thatched roof and a stunning view of the sea. The locals told me it had once belonged to a widow who lost her husband to the sea and spent her remaining days waiting for his return. On the third night of my stay, I awoke to the sound of soft crying. It seemed to be coming from the living room. I got out of bed and slowly made my way towards the sound. As I entered the living room, I saw a shadowy figure of a woman sitting by the window, looking out to the sea, weeping quietly. Her silhouette was illuminated by the moonlight streaming in through the window. "Are you all right?" I asked, my voice trembling. The figure turned slowly to face me, and I could see the deep sadness in her eyes. She didn't speak, just shook her head and then vanished into thin air. The next morning, I spoke to a local fisherman about the encounter. He nodded gravely and said that was the widow. She's been waiting for her husband for over 100 years. She only appears to those who stay in her cottage. The rest of my stay was peaceful, but I couldn't shake the feeling of her presence. The widow's sorrow had left a lasting impression on me. The Ghostly Fisherman. Ballygally's coast is not just known for its beautiful scenery but also for the stories of those who never returned from the sea. One such tale is that of the Ghostly Fisherman, who is said to wander the shore on stormy nights. During our family vacation, we stayed in a quaint house overlooking the rugged coastline. One evening, a fierce storm rolled in, and the crashing waves against the rocks created a haunting symphony. I decided to take a walk along the shore despite the weather, drawn by the wild beauty of the stormy sea. As I walked, I saw a figure in the distance, struggling against the wind. He was dressed in old-fashioned fisherman's attire, with a sou'wester hat and heavy coat. Concerned for his safety, I hurried towards him. When I got closer, the figure turned to face me, and I saw his weathered face and sorrowful eyes. "Are you all right?" I called out, but my words were swallowed by the wind. He didn't respond, just turned back towards the sea, staring intently. Suddenly, a massive wave crashed against the shore, and the figure was gone. I looked around, confused and a little shaken. There was no sign of him, no footprints in the sand, nothing to indicate anyone had been there. Back at the house, I told my family about the encounter. The owner of the house, who lived next door, overheard and said, "You saw the Ghostly Fisherman. He's been seen many times during storms. They say he's searching for his lost crew, who perished at sea long ago." The encounter left me with a profound sense of melancholy and respect for the sea and those who brave its dangers. The Ghostly Fisherman's eternal search serves as a haunting reminder of the perils faced by those who make their living on the water.